I'm Lorenzo.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry to have all of this input. I gather you've agreed to this.
It's fine. Now I'm getting used. It was quite also fun experience.
So you don't have to do it. If you, it's really up to you.
No, it's okay. I mean, anyway, you're gonna have a public interview, so it's okay. I mean, it's a bit different from a research interview, but yeah. We are going to discuss about issues that will be.
Are you comfortable? You sure?
I'm comfortable already at my third interview now with Canada actually.
Okay. All right. And do you want something to drink?
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
You sure?
Sure, I'm fine.
All right. Let's.
So, first of all, thank you.
I must say I didn't remember that. I didn't know this was happening.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Professor Adam Ali, to accept the interview part of this project. I'm actually Italian postdoc. I'm based at School of Maestro in Pisa, where I carry out this research on student mobilizations around the world, especially for cases of mobilizations: Italy, the UK, Quebec, and Chile. We are a team of 3 people, one professor, another friend of mine is colleague from Chile, who is actually a postdoc there. And this is actually an additional case of mobilization, so we're going to have also investigation of the South African student protest. So the main research question of the project is to look at the policy impact. Did these protests have achieved, did they have some impact in terms of policy at national level, in terms of political outcome? So this is the kind of question we are gonna actually to look for in our 2 years investigation. Actually, we are almost at the end of this contract or this project. But for the case of South Africa, we are going to have actually a different type of research, more actually focused on the dynamics of mobilization, the cause of this mobilization in these 20 years, let's say, of post-apartheid regime. So, but let's now start with our interview.
Let me do that before we start.
Sure.
So have you read what I've written?
Sure. I read Reimagining University. I read 3 or 4 of your articles.
So there's a couple of pieces in Maverick, which you've seen.
I read them, yeah. I read.
And you've seen the piece in the Journal for Southern African Studies.
I think so, yeah.
This is the one on the universities and in the post-apartheid era.
Sure, I kind of, but I also like to meet you to.
No, I'm happy with that. I just want to know. I just want to know what you've read.
More or less, I know you in terms of public, profile. So
then the final thing I want to check is:
sure.
Have you seen the book on the transformation, the transition in South Africa?
There actually are several books.
The Suspended Revolution.
I think.
So this is the one. The reason I want to ask you.
Sure. No, I didn't. I didn't have.
This one here.
Okay.
Have you seen this?
I saw it, I suppose, but I didn't have the chance to read.
The reason I say this.
That is here. Okay. Perfect.
So unfortunately, that's the only copy I have. So you'll have to pick it up and copy at the bookshops.
Okay.
But here's the issue that I want you to look at.
Yeah.
The reason I want you to do that is because it will give you the train of thought.
Sure.
Because my current pieces are about the university and the problems and what's happened.
Sure.
But if you want to understand that, you have to understand my analysis of South Africa and what's working and what's not working. Okay. And you will see that in that book, I've been predicting we're heading for a crisis for some time.
Okay.
And so that book will give you, if you like, the contextual fact.
Sure.
About it. So if you can't, if you spoke to Kanina.
Yeah.
Then just ask Kanina to put you in touch with Wits University Press.
Sure.
And you can pick up a copy in any way. It's worth. It will be in the libraries, so you can pick it up from the library. Okay. But the point I'm making is that's the contextual form where the arguments of those shorter articles
are. Perfect. Okay. We are going to discuss, I think, in the conversation anyway. But okay, so let's start with the first question. I have like 3 sections, let's say. The first part is on the education in terms of general, background. I want to ask more issue about how education is in South Africa, and then in the second and more contentious, hopefully, part of the interview, we're gonna, discuss the student protest of 2015. So the first question I want to ask, which I want to discuss with you, is about higher education in South Africa. So it's quite a rhetorical question, I suppose, but I need to know your view or your opinion on this. Do you think that higher education in the post-apartheid era was seen by South Africans, when I say South Africa, I mean all the different races, as one of the pillars promoting social mobility on the one hand, and on the other hand, even there is a different equality among different races. So this is, I think, the best question on which I would like to have your brief.
No, absolutely. I think that's exactly right. I think they might not have used those words.
Sure.
But across the board, there is a realization in South Africa
Sure.
that higher education is a passport to enabling class mobility
Okay.
and social mobility. People see themselves as really using higher education to earn an income,
Sure.
to use the income to promote others in the family from proceeding to university, schooling in university, to create a framework for class mobility. In South Africa, black people are particularly mindful
Sure.
of how higher education and university education
Sure.
was used to enable class mobility within the white population, particularly within the Afrikaans population over the last 30, 40 years, between 48 and, let's say, 1990. And they imagine
Sure.
that a similar enablement of class mobility will happen through the university system. And so, yes, absolutely, it was always seen as a passport.
Do you think that also higher education has been also used, I mean, from a rhetorical point of view, by ANC as a way to, as you said, promote social mobility, but also in order to avoid other more direct type of intervention in terms of social redistribution? So education has been considered a way, an easy way to say, in order to avoid big issues in terms of transform society from a socio-economic type of view with more interventionist type of measure. So
I mean, the problem with that question is that it assumes it was an intent of the ANC government that they actually embarked on higher education as a means to avoid the other.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that it was done with such intent.
Sure.
Although I think the net effect is the same. So I think that there is a strong understanding within the ANC, but broadly within the society,
Sure.
that higher education needs to be opened up.
Sure.
That higher education needs to enable a class mobility.
Sure.
That higher education is important for economic growth.
Sure.
That higher education is the thing. So I think what you had in opening up access to higher education is everybody, all the factions within the ANC and outside the ANC, recognizing the value of higher education. Even neoliberals say we need the universities to work,
Sure.
to be able to achieve growth in the economy, to be able to create the kinds of things. So the one context was that everybody agreed to that, and I think there's an innate belief within the ANC and outside that actually it's decent to open up access. I think that while they did that in other contexts, they felt constrained to actually engage in social transformation. So their macroeconomic policy has been fairly conservative, and I make that point.
Now we go actually to that point.
I think that they made decisions around ensuring the BE was directed at the elite levels of the political apparatus, including within the ANC, rather than a small business development that is directed at small entrepreneurs. I think those were political choices that the ANC made, partly because they felt compelled by international and national factors, partly because of their own ambition, because of their own desires. And in that context, the net effect is education became an easy mechanism and implementer of social transformation, but the other elements that could have enabled it, they didn't do because they felt far more constrained. There's an interesting quote there with the Minister of Finance, Trevor Manuel, and he and I were having a debate about whether, as Minister of Finance, he did what should have happened. And I argued with him that he could have been more interventionist, that he would have directed, he asked me what would you do, and I said, BE I would have directed to small businesses.
Yeah.
They would have been small businesses, but they would have achieved more employment, they would have achieved more economic inequality, you would have created a broader and deeper class structure. And his answer was, what makes you think we didn't know that? We were, our colleagues and comrades in the ANC felt we wanted to be rich capitalists and not small capitalists.
Yeah.
So that captured, if you like, that there was a choice that the ANC made, as much as they may have felt constrained by the global economy and the nature of the global economy. And so the net effect of what you're saying is true, that this was an easier way to do it, but I don't think that was they deliberately planned to do this and not the others. It just played out like that over the period of time.
Yeah, actually, quite true. So, do you think actually that education in South Africa is also economically relevant issue in the sense that business are willing to invest on education? How is the state of the education in South Africa in terms of business, in terms of, there is an interest of South Africa's firms to...
I think it depends when.
Yeah,
and in which period?
I would say, I would like to know from you the evolution from the
1994.
From the post-apartheid we're talking about.
So let me say before that, I think that South African business in the apartheid period was very much immersed in the South African university system. So for instance, Wits University would never have developed its mining industry and the strong foundation it had in the mining industry without the influence of capital. We were involved in much of our engineering departments, our science faculties, our medicine were very much integrated, either in South African big business environments, particularly English-speaking capital, Anglo-American and other parties. Some of that was done at a research level, some of it was done funding research chairs, lots of that was funding scholarships and other things. I think, and there was kind of political support. At various moments, big capital used the universities to enable a conversation with other radical elements that were emerging in society. So I think that the universities, particularly places like Wits, UCT, etc., had a very, very close relationship. Not all universities, but those universities. I think the Afrikaner universities also had a good relationship, but firstly more integrally with the state, the apartheid state, and then secondly with the companies that emerged out of the Afrikaner state, the banking system, some of the Afrikaans companies, around mines, some of the defense contract industries, the parastatals, etc. In the post-1994 period, I think it became a much more complex thing. One of the problems was that as part of the macroeconomic agenda, many of the big players that supported universities went global. They listed on the London Stock Exchange, partly as a part of an opening up of the South African economy to the global economy, as part of the macroeconomic strategy. And as that happened, I think large layers of big business began to erode the engagement with the university system. I think in some cases they even offshored research agendas to institutions elsewhere. I think, for instance, De Beers' entire research infrastructure got exported to, I think it was first somewhere in Ireland. I think similar things have happened with other institutions. And so I think Genco's merger with Billiton to create a kind of global mining company ensured that got listed primarily in Australia, and then subsequently research infrastructures and all got constructed there and in the UK. Anglo left, and I think its own research relationships began to erode. And as part of 1994 also, what you saw is the parastatals began to focus on narrow profitability requirements as opposed to developmental outcomes. So internship programs, development of artisans by ESCOM and Transnet began to erode. And so I think you had a fundamentally different set of relationships. That doesn't mean that there wasn't any support. But I think increasingly support was structured at scholarships, bursaries. It was part of the CSI.
Sure.
But I imagine that in relationship terms with the university, that far less an integral relationship that they could have had.
Sure.
And I think that that's true. I think that changed in the last couple of years.
How? In which way?
I think that you've seen more support. Ironically, I think the student protest shook South African capital up.
Sure.
They began to get very, very worried that the entire system is going to unravel. And I think we've seen in the last 2 years enormous support from big business around scholarships programs, other support, etc., beginning to emerge. I think it emerged slightly before that, but it took on an added impetus.
Sure.
I think there was a realization beginning to emerge that the polarization that was emerging out of neoliberalism was beginning to manifest in the university system. And the university started beginning to play in putting some money into the system. And I think you saw that dramatically since 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
I also think that other kinds of money came through regulatory norms. So the CETAs, which is the skills levy,
Sure.
that emerged out of the skills levy, began to put money that came from the corporates through them into the university system. But for me, one of the bigger problems with the post-apartheid investment is that it was simply constructed at the level of scholarships and paying for fees as it's a CSI thing, as opposed to an integral relationship. If you go to parts of Europe and Western Europe and the United States and even parts of Southeast Asia, etc., you see corporates and the universities are much more structured. Their research arms, or at least part of the research arms, are located in the universities. They fund research chairs. They fund research centers. They are integrally located in rethinking the knowledge infrastructure of the nation. And I find that far less intensive. I think it was far more in the apartheid period than now. I think they still give scholarships, but they're not as fundamentally integrated into the creating a research infrastructure in the universities that speak to the economy itself, as would happen in more democratic, more stable societies.
Yeah, actually, quite clear on this. Now, before actually introducing the most contentious issue on the student protest, I'd like to discuss a little bit of another important, let's say, contentious issue over the last 20 years. It is also part of the, to a certain extent, a factor explaining and boosting the protest in 2015. So I would like you to reflect upon the concept of transformation. So the first question I would like to ask you is, do you think, first of all, what do you mean, what is transformation for you? What was transformation for the ANC government? And with respect to the, I think, education policy, do you think that it has been, to a certain extent, successful, or it has been a failure, a mix of them? You have a complex answer on this concept of transformation that you can see is quite important for the students of 2015, 2016, how they then engage with this content in this also process.
So let me say, I'm going to answer this at multiple levels.
Sure.
You asked me what is my view,
Yeah.
what is the ANC's view,
and what
and what
is
is the state's
Sure.
agenda that it implemented,
Yeah.
and then perhaps how do students interpret this, and is the interpretation appropriate or not. So I think that these are, I'm going to go to all of those.
Okay, fine.
So my view is, firstly, is transformation important, obviously.
Sure.
And how would I define it? I would imagine that transformation is how do you ensure that your institution is both locally responsive and globally competitive?
Okay.
And the question is, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to be locally responsive and global.
Yeah.
If you're going to be locally responsive, you must address the fundamental challenges of your society. And the fundamental challenges of your society coming out of an apartheid history is to bridge the divides of inequality. But it's also to bridge the race issue. It's to create and ensure that you create a set of circumstances in which black people who've been denied educational privileges are enabled to get access to those educational rights, and then through the process to enable a class mobility. So in that context, you want to ensure that race is addressed. You want to ensure that gender is addressed. You want to ensure that class is addressed and inequality is addressed. But you want to do that in a way that enables empowerment. And you want to do that in a way that doesn't detract from global competitiveness. Because you can transform, like happened in many parts of this continent. But if the quality of the institutions decline, you've not created and enabled class mobility. You've created, if you like, an immiseration of poverty. And so, how do you do this, but in a way that retains and enhances class competitiveness, global competitiveness, but also quality in higher education? And so that's the trick that you need to think through. And that for me is important. And so it's about race, it's about gender, it's about class. If you want to ask about what in race, class, gender, it's about ensuring students get access across all of these divides, race, class, gender. But it's also ensuring that the symbolic representations of the institutions reflects the very people and students feel comfortable. It's not about them getting access, it's about them getting access but that they feel comfortable in the institution.
Yeah.
It also means about transforming the class, the professoriate, and how the professoriate changes. It's about curriculum reform. It's about the symbolic representations of the institutions itself. It's about all of these things rolled up. Now, what does the ANC believe in that? I think that the ANC's rhetoric and its implementation has been very different. Its rhetoric is that it has believed in transforming these institutions. It has believed in making sure that these institutions increase the access for women students and black students, and that has been a big part of it, and for poor students. It's been very committed to notions of transforming the professoriate.
Sure.
It's been committed to notions of, at least in rhetorical terms, moving towards increasing access. But what I think the ANC did is it had one set of agendas, but it was never prepared to make the hard choices that are required to see these outcomes through.
Why? Was never prepared.
And I think that that's in part got to do with the very political economy that it chose in 1996. When it adopted a conservative macroeconomic agenda,
Sure.
it made certain choices. So you can't say, I want transform professoriate if you don't put money in scholarships for masters and PhDs. Because if you don't get masters and PhDs, you can't get postdocs and you can't get professors.
Yeah.
So they didn't put that kind of investment. You can't say, I want effectively increased access. I want to retain quality, but then I'm going to decline the amount of spending in universities. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
so you contradict. You say one thing, you do it another.
Sure.
Too much of the ANC have said since 1994, we believe in free education.
Yeah.
MP says it all the time. But when they actually make choices on budget apportionment, they actually act in ways that undermine free education. In fact, they act in the opposite direction. They reduce the subsidy. Because you can't have free education if you decrease the per capita subsidy.
Yeah.
And effectively, in the last 20 years, what we've done in the last 23 years, what the South African state has done is moved student numbers from 420,000 to 1.1 million students. But its subsidy began to decline, so effectively the per capita subsidy began to decline, and they were spending less per student in the university. And you demanded that we retain quality. Now if you do that, you force the universities to increase fees.
Yeah.
Now you knew what you were doing. But what you will do is, as the universities do that, you swear them for increasing it, but you actually make the decisions that makes that outcome possibility. So that's, I think, the ANC, and frankly, fed into the state. The third part, is the state. What was successful with the state?
Okay.
And it seems to me that what the state did do is massify. Whether you like it or not, you have to admit that the state said, we're going to massify education.
Sure.
And we're going to ensure that we grow the system. And in the process, they did grow from 420,000 to 1.1. You can't say that that didn't happen. They did enable more poor students to come in. Now, they may not have done it sufficiently, but they created a scholarship system this fast that started in 2002 that slowly began to increase, and more poor and poorer students came into the system. You can't say that wits is exactly the same as it was in 1994. In 1994, we might have had 20%, 30% of black students. 20%, 30, 25%. Now we're 80%. Don't tell me there's no change. 56% of our students are women. Even in high programs, that has happened. So what the state did do is massify. It did it badly, it didn't give enough money, it forced the universities to increase fees, it did it that, but it did massively.
This is precisely the process that's been contested by the student, the fact that actually this, meaning of transformation was actually associated with the concept of assimilation, of integration of blacks into the system, that was actually into the whole system with the whole white values, if you look at this institution. What actually students were contesting was precisely what we were mentioning before, the fact that actually university, transforming the sense of numbers, as you said rightly, you have 80% of students here are blacks, but the institution, this was one of the main criticisms in 2015 and 2016, is still historically, is still white in terms of value, in terms of norms, in terms of program, curricula, so what do you respond on this?
So that's the thing. Firstly, here's your mistake.
What is your view?
I'm going to come to that. I'm going to come to that because I said to you I'm going to come to students.
Sure. Yeah.
So here is the issue, and I think you can't firstly homogenize the entire university system.
Sure, that's for sure.
So you have to look at which universities you're looking at.
I'm talking about the historically white.
Now the historically white, but even in the historically white, you got historically Afrikaans. Yeah. You got Stellenbosch University, which has 63% or 64% white students.
Sure.
You got Wits University, which has 22% white students. Those are two very, very different things.
Sure.
Now here's where I agree with the students and I disagree. What do you mean by a white institution? No. The point I'm making, I'm asking it rhetorically. The students say the values are white. What's white? What values are white? Name them.
Yeah.
They say, well, actually they're white because they're capitalist oriented. What makes you think that the vast majority of black people are not capitalist oriented? Go to the BE people. Go to half of the state. So the question you have to ask is, at some levels I think the students have been very simplistic in this regard. On the other hand, I think that where they have a point, that if you go to certain institutions, the way the value system operates, the way the symbolic representations of the institution, the names of the buildings, some of that actually comes from an apartheid history. It comes from not a sufficient responsiveness to the emergence of a new layer of students. Language, and how language is constructed. And is language sufficiently appreciative of where people come from? Is curriculum in the arts and the humanities sufficiently appreciative of the fact that we've got a tradition of black thought and black social science that emerged in this thing? I think that there's an argument to be made, is maybe mathematics in its essence isn't different, but how you teach mathematics is very, very different if you're located in South Africa or you're located in a poor environment, etc. So I think that there is an element of truth in that. But I also think that there is some of it as being too easily said, because actually, even on every one of those fronts, we have a situation. WITS is very different from UCT. It's very different from UWC. Of the research-intensive universities, I think we have one of the most transformed. Let me tell you, in 2002, we introduced a course on Fanon. On Fanon in 2002.
Yeah, but it's not only about, if students would say, it's not only about, introducing a course on Fanon in order to be transformed in terms of...
No, I'm not saying that. But here's let me finish the story.
Sure.
None of the students wanted to come to the course. They didn't believe it. In 2002, the students said, what's this Fanon? We're not interested in Fanon. We're interested in being elites in the global economy. In 2013, a new generation of students.
White professor.
No. Actually, there wasn't. That actually was done by progressives. And it is the point I want left-leaning progressive scholars to understand is there's no sacrosanct, some perfect ideology, and there's a social movement that believes in it. That always, society is much more complex. It's class-ridden. It's contextually ridden. Let me tell you some of the shit. Some of the activists that talk about Fanon, go into Twitter, and you will see they talk about consumption. They talk about sugar daddies and how cool it is to manipulate sugar daddies. They talk about driving BMWs. Some of them do drive BMWs. There's an interesting complex notion of Fanon on the one hand, and Biko and others. And at the same time, people's lives that are possible to articulate. And there's an express contradiction in that. Some of the very people who talk Fanon are very, very materialistic in their own existence. And I don't mean that of students, but I mean that of professors, I mean that of vice chancellors. We have to understand. Now, none of this does not mean that this movement is not legitimate. It's fundamentally legitimate. But we must understand and study. If you want to be truly transform our institutions and social movements,
Sure.
you need to actually take it as a study. You don't treat the movement like you're reading the Bible. It's not a religious discourse. It's an intellectual discourse. It's an investigation. The contradictions must be exposed. We must learn from those contradictions. Let me give you another example. On naming, I'm fascinated by this.
Sure.
There is no doubt symbolic representations at the universities represent an earlier era. So many people, and in cities, people have said, let's transform the institutions. Let's replace the white names with black names. Now here's the contradiction. If you truly want to be African, if you truly want to be indigenous, naming after individuals is a Western custom, whether black individuals or white. It's a Western custom. In indigenous communities, they don't name after Western individuals. They name after evocative description. Now, ironically, go to Durban. They name all the names, replace white names with black names. They say we're being indigenous. Actually, they don't know their own history. That's the irony. So, now, by the way, I don't mean we shouldn't name after black individuals, because we are as influenced by Western customs as we are by indigenous. My argument is we should name after evocative description, after individuals. When we name after individuals, we name after political figures. We name this building Solomon Mashlan, but we must name after poets, artists, community activists. We must name after a much more diverse plethora of names. The point I'm making is there is a debate to be had on how you transform naming. And much of the debate amongst the activists hasn't thought those things through. I think there's been some good work by some students around financing access. I voice support for this. I think that the best modeling for access to universities has come from a group of young lecturers, Kaya Sitola, and students, by the way, not political students, ironically accounting students who came together and they figured a plan. And I think it's one of the most sophisticated. I think in curriculum, a lot of it's nonsensical, but there's been some very good stuff. There's a young guy called, I've forgotten his name, in UCT, who's an engineer, who's written a beautiful thing. Brian, who wrote a beautiful piece around how to transform engineering curriculums and how you can make it respond. So I think that there's some very thoughtful pieces. My worry about the social movement is that there's a debate to be had, and it's a legitimate issue. But you need to engage it in a thoughtful way, and you need to engage it in a process way. If you engage in spectacle, if you engage without thinking this through, you can create perverse outcomes. And that's what I think one needs to be careful. I've often said, one of the things that you would understand in the West European experience, when the left made mistakes in the 20s and 30s, they enabled fascism to come to the fore. We've seen in Cambodia, Pol Pot may come from the left and destroy society. We saw it with Stalin. We saw it with Mao and in the Cultural Revolution. How we engage and transform society is also important. And so the real debate with the movement is not that they have a legitimate. Remember, my entire book said this 7 years before the students actually put it on the agenda. My argument is how we do it is important. What the debate is, what form that debate takes. That's the real debate. And I don't think this is Animami. I think that many other VCs, many other academics are open to transforming. The question is how we have the debate and how we do it.
Yeah, it's all actually clear. We will agree on this view, is your point and your view. But actually, now I'd like you to, discuss more about the structural, let's say, causes of the 2015 protests, because you know better than me that in these 20 years you had actually several episodes of protests, especially in historically black universities. So my question is about how did it happen that this issue of transformation, this issue of raising certain topic related to the inequality, financial exclusion, was so massively discussed and so massively raised in 2015. So do you think, first of all, that the students in their own protest mobilization, to a certain extent, were also a way to respond to what they perceive as a betrayal by the transformation process of the ANC governing these 20 years? And then, do you think that this process it has been, to a certain extent, successful? So what we want to discuss is about, what are the causes of this massive mobilization? I think it's related to the concept of transformation and the broken promise.
Okay, so I think that you're in part right, but you need to give some meat to this.
Sure.
So there's two parts of the protest. One is the transformation protest.
Sure.
The transformation protest, which is about alienation from the university environment, emerges largely in the Western Cape. It doesn't emerge here. It has resonance here, but it emerges around Rhodes Must Fall, around the issues of the issues there. That's the way. In wits, what emerges in 6 months later, 7 months later, is the issue of access and fees. Now, they're related, but they're slightly distinctive. Sure. And it's important to bear those two things in mind. The second, there's a big difference between these struggles and the struggles in the historically black universities over the last 20 years. Sure. In one sense, that in the struggle in the historically black universities is the revolt of the working classes and underclasses. The struggles that emerge in WITS and UCT and Stellenbosch around fees is the revolt of the middle classes. And it's worth bearing in mind. There's some overlap, but it's quite striking.
The revolt against whom?
The revolt against around government, but also the universities at the cost of higher education. Now, why do I say this? In the earlier years, the fees, as the emergence happened, as universities started, in the early years after 1994, there was a first wave of protest in 94, 95. In 95, 96 actually. And then what happens is the series of protests, big protests that happen in the historically black universities. Because poor students cannot afford the fees. As a response to that, government brings together the NISFA system. And the NISFA system comes in 2002, 2001, 2002, and largely the NISFA system starts providing access to students from very, very poor communities, 120,000 or below. That's less than $10,000 per annum family income. That's you. You're not poor. You're very, very poor. Sure. So those are the people that the NISFA system brings. And over the next couple of years, that's where the protests happen, and that's what the system begins to respond to. The people who are excluded out of it are effectively the middle class. Not really the middle class. Those below, yes, the missing middle. Those above the discussed 120,000, but running up to what you would call the middle class is 700, 800, 900. And those people actually are located in the historically white universities progressively over this period. And the historically white universities, what they did when the subsidies were declining, the historically black universities couldn't do it. We could, because we had brand value, we could increase fees.
Sure.
And so we were increasing fees by double digits. And so effectively the fee system was beginning to increase. So ironically we said we're public universities, but by 2015, most of our income came from private sources.
Sure.
It came from fees, even though we meant to be a public university. And that's the problem that emerged. And so what you began to see around the student protests, at least around fees, is a build-up of this movement. Now, we knew this is coming. So before, the year before, 2015, October 2015, I, on behalf of the Vice Chancellors, went to see the banks and said we're heading for a crisis. That actually we're heading for a university curve. We went before the protest started at WITS, 10 days before, at the end of 30th September, I think, 2015. We went to the President over the Minister of Higher Education, and we had a meeting with him saying we're heading for a crisis. We're heading for an explosion unless we resolve the issue of access, because the price of higher education is becoming. If you don't believe me, Google it, because it was covered on the national news. And the President and I had a press conference around this. So actually, ironically, we knew that this was beginning to build. The problem was, we couldn't resolve the problem so long as the state didn't come to the party. And ironically, the only time the state came to the party is when the social explosion happened in October. So effectively, all between you and me, I had said to the President, and again I did this thing then, I had said to him, we're going to explode, but I had calculated we will explode in January 2016. Like 3 months later, because I thought when you start in the new year, when you're registering students, that's when it will blow. In fact, what it did is 10 days later.
You announced the increase of fee, right, in that period?
Yes, so we announced the fee increase, but normally the protests happen the next year when people have to pay the fee increase. So that's what effectively happened.
Now, I understand that there was this financial problem, but given the fact that you were quite concerned with the issue of equality within the university system, why you didn't find another option, instead of increased tuition fees? So why did you, as you said, you are with the students, so you were with the students, you actually wrote a book in which you say actually were already writing 7 years before what then the students claimed during the protest. But why then in reality, in practice, did you want to increase the fees?
So then tell me,
what was the gap between your intention and your action in terms of announcement?
I think that's brilliant. And the answer to that is Marx. The answer to that is Marx.
Okay.
The answer to that is Gramsci.
Yeah. What
so
do you
the
mean?
question, I'm going to say this. So you see, this is the interesting thing about radical literature. Radical literature says very clearly that what you have to understand is structural dynamics.
Sure.
But what you have to also understand as part of structural dynamics is structural constraints.
Sure.
Men make history, according to Marx, but never as they please. They make it within circumstances chosen by themselves and that are historically born. Now here's the question that I asked. Our goal is twofold. Our goal is to increase access, but it's to enhance quality, to keep quality. If we enable access and we lose quality, we lose the agenda because we don't achieve the social mobility. So in a context where your government gives you an increase in subsidy of 3%, you know that your cost structures are 8% because inflation is 6%. Plus 2%, which is Council for Higher Education makes an analysis that it's 8%. 2% above normal inflation. So it's 8%. In that context, what do? You've got two options. You either give lower fees if you give lower fees, you start compromising on quality, and you do what has happened to the education system. Right? You start declining. That's the story of the African continent.
Yeah.
What you then do, your second option, is you say, actually, we do that, but we enhance access, but we retain quality, which means we access the fees. But then, how do you get people to pay the fees? So what do? We go to the banks and say, can you create a loan system? That's where the debate for Ikusasa emerged. Now, is that a good model? I tell you no. Why? Because in 10 years' time, I will have a situation that the Americans have, which is a 1.3 trillion debt, and people can't pay the debt. So I accept that. But in a context where you have structural constraints, what choices you make.
Sure.
So I made the debate. I said, actually, if I have to make a choice between no graduates and graduates with a debt, I'll take graduates with the debt. Because at least you then live to fight another day. You see, that's the debate that we need to have. My grumble with activists is they don't understand structural constraints. They don't understand how to transform structural constraints. They don't understand you can't have, in this context, a conversation that takes structural constraints. How do you create the bridge between the inability of the moment and to create a new set of circumstances? And I haven't yet received a single proposal prior to the protest, that allowed you to find a solution. Now, what I think the students' movement did do is by going on a protest, by engaging in a social struggle, by marching on the stage, by this thing, they changed the parameters. They opened up the space. Now people are prepared to think options that they never thought. Yeah. Before we were talking to the banks were saying to us, no. Now, the banks are saying, come, we help you. Then the state was saying no graduate tax. Now the state is saying, we can think about a graduate tax. So the options have opened up because of the social struggle. Sure. But in that context, if you want to understand, could you have done anything else without compromising quality and access? The question is, I haven't heard a single answer.
But anyway, actually, because of the struggle in October at least, then to a certain extent, students have achieved this, zero increase tuition for 2016. So my question is, how did they achieve this? Why the government, on the one hand, has considered this victory, let's say, at the national level? And then I want to know more from your perspective as vice chancellor at that time, also the struggle at wits. Then I want to focus more on the national level, because as you said, okay, the option can also be opened by the strugglers, and that's why then you had a kind of concession, allowing.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Andrew has requested a briefing at 4:30, but he's running about 10 minutes late. Could you break in 5 minutes?
We will, and then we have to come back because we're not finished.
Okay.
So do you want us to finish?
Do you want to handle it?
So let Tawana handle it and say to them, I'll come in 25 minutes.
Okay.
And I'll get a full briefing. Okay? So can I get some water? What happened to my water?
I know, just put it on the floor.
Oh, sorry.
sorry about that. It was just.
So how did they? About the concession. So because apparently there is, there are options when there are struggles. So
okay. So here's the issue. So firstly, I recognize the importance of social struggles. Sure. I believe that social struggles are an important element.
Sure.
They are necessary but not a sufficient condition for transformation.
Sure.
So, and you will see in my 2015 piece plus the 2016 piece, I said the students achieved in 10 days what we tried for 10 years.
Yes.
So I've made that point.
Yeah.
So the social struggle is itself important.
Sure.
But the social struggle only takes you so far. What had happened is that I think that movement surprised not only government, not only us, it surprised the students themselves. I remember having a conversation with the student movement downstairs at the night. And I said to them, Look, we'll give you, provided government makes the reciprocal investment. And I said, I don't think they will, because I've been talking to them for multiple years. And the university, the students, I don't think they believed it as well. That's why they started with 0% increase. In fact, the SRC in wits didn't ask for 0%. They asked for, can we get it between 9.5 and 9.8, not 10.5, because they said if you bring it below 10, this thing. But when the movement started correctly, they said, well, let's go for the 0%.
Sure.
So government got shaken up, I think, both by the March on Parliament. I think they were shocked at that.
Sure.
They got on the March on the Union Building. When government, what had happened is, if you look at the trajectory, that action started at wits on Friday.
Sure.
We spent that whole night. By Monday, it had spread to all around the country. Tuesday, we met with the minister. The minister offered 6%. So he said he'll make up the extra, but 6% is no real increase, it's only inflation. The students rejected that. They then had a march on Parliament. That afternoon, on the march, I got a call from the president, because I was the chair of the vice chancellors. And they said, what would you recommend? And I said, give the 0%. Because you're not going to stop this.
Okay, stay.
I said, give the 0%. Now, by the way, if you don't believe that,
I can't believe that. It's quite.
on Friday morning,
Yeah.
because I actually had moved from to Friday to Monday to Tuesday, suddenly I believed, hey, you could get the 0%. On Friday, if you asked me, will you get the 0%? My argument was, I said to the students, no, you won't get it. By Wednesday, after the March on Parliament, given the size of the protest, I thought that there was a move and the state would make this concession. So they asked us, what would you say? And when we met on Friday with the student leadership, the president, the vice chancellors, I was asked to start on speak on behalf of the vice chancellors. We said we support the 0%.
So, yeah, well, I'm puzzled because, as far as I understand, you, to a certain extent, you trigger all this movement with your announcement at the beginning of October, but at the very end, in a time frame of 1-2 weeks, then you also provide a solution by suggesting to the president the zero increase tuition fee. How is possible? I mean, in terms of why did you do that? First of all, how did you change? Why did you change?
Yeah, the answer is that you get changed by your movement. Your social movement changes your consciousness. That's a classic analysis.
Okay, I want to hear this from you.
So your social movement,
Cameron.
if you think in 2015, one of the things that are progressive administrators,
You recognize that the first act, the announcement was wrong. Now I recognize that.
So to be clear, I never said that.
No,
What I am
I'm
saying,
asking you,
yes, what I'm saying,
then,
what I'm saying is what I said to you initially.
Sure.
I said I believe that the struggle was a legitimate one.
okay.
I believe as a vice chancellor, I had no option but to announce that increase because there were no possibilities
Sure.
to avoid it. When a social movement emerges, I believe that the parameters change.
Sure.
You understand this. And
yeah.
so what you do is as the parameters change, you think there is a possibility to get that increase. And so you make a recommendation. Some people see that as a contradiction. I don't. I think
It's power
it's you respond to power.
Sure.
You respond. The first time I'm responding to the constraints of the institutional
In
system.
absence of social struggle.
Now when social struggle opens,
Sure.
it opens up the space. You make the call.
Very good.
You say that this thing. This is not the first time, by the way. In 2013, when I first came, the students asked me that the unions
Sure.
asked me, will you do insourcing? Because
Yeah,
the people
now
are this thing.
insourcing.
I said to them, you know what, I agree with you, the people are paid terribly.
Sure.
I think it's injustice. But my problem is,
We didn't-
how do I pay? I don't have the money.
Sure.
So they said to me, but you can do it. I said, I can't.
And why did you afterwards?
In 2015, when I conceded, I agreed. Why?
Why?
Because I can now find the money. How did we pay for it? I did a 6% cut on everybody's academic program, and I took the research, the money from, the interest
Sure.
for researchers.
Yeah.
50 million of them, they get 50 million a year, which they used to put in their codes. I said, I'm taking this away. Now, if I tried that in 2013, they would have stopped me. in 2016 after the protest, they said, no, let's do that. So ironically, the movement opens up possibilities.
So you are actually recognizing the importance of social struggle.
Oh, absolutely. I've said this 100 times. That's why I say you achieve in 10 days they achieve this. That has to happen. So social movements are a necessary, but not a sufficient feature of progressive transformation. The other, by the way, is their vice chancellors.
Yeah, okay. Just
adjust
another, just over. But yeah, you can.
So there are vice chancellors who, if they didn't believe in higher education,
Still a bit second.
so if vice chancellors don't believe in lower cost education or free education, then they don't change.
Sure.
But if you are and do believe in it, you may be constrained, but then you can change, because that's the nature of progressive administrators who meant to respond to the very power relations in the society. So I think that's the context to understand why there's a change.
Actually, so do you consider yourself sort of progressive sensory with respect to the...
Broadly, yes.
Okay, so the follow-up question is about then I would say the shift in terms of escalation of confrontational tactics in 2016.
Yes.
So it was quite evident that on campus level, at wits at least, also maybe at the campus level, since you are actually at wits, I want to discuss with the wits, there was a process of securitization, militarization of the campus.
Okay, that's what you mean, but we'll talk about what that means.
Yeah, it means that there were actually, call for, private guard police in campus, checking for, or the controlling actually the students to not misbehave. So why did you do that? Why did you use more confrontational tactic towards the protest after the 2015?
Let me answer this question again, because again this is an important question for the left to start understanding.
Precisely.
So firstly, the one principle is social movements are very important for changing power relations because they open up possibilities. But social movements can also create perverted outcomes. So let me give you an example. In the social movements of 1968, the very movement that transformed the nature of higher education in Western Europe and the United States, there are elements of that movement that also became militaristic and became this thing. So the Baden-Meinhof gang had become engaged in urban guerrilla warfare and were destroyed. There are similar movements that happen in other social movements. So
it's due to the interaction with the rest
the
outcome of the interaction. Wouldn't say that from the beginning we have a confrontational approach.
We can have. Well, first, let me finish.
Yeah, sorry,
so the question is, there are movements that can land up in perverted outcomes.
Sure.
I'll give you others. Idi Amin in Uganda, Pol Pot in Cambodia, the nature of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, Stalin in Russia. There's a myriad set of examples. North Korea, and over a period of time. So here's the point. When we go, so that's the first point I just want us to understand.
So the background information.
So when we go into 2016, in January, on day one of our admissions, we have students 20 in 20, unlike 2015, 20 in 20 students who try to block the admissions. They say if there's no free education, similar to 1986, in the midst of the anti-apartheid struggle, when students said there will be no education before liberation. It was the left who stood up and said that that's an incorrect slogan and fought them on that. That slogan re-emerges in 2016. Our first attempt is to negotiate. We negotiate, no deal. They refuse to this thing. Ironically, that movement tries to create a situation where those 20 activists, the people who can register are the middle classes because they can register on the internet. Yeah. But the working classes who come because they don't have credit cards, etc., can't register because they impacted, they have to come physically to the place. So the first thing is we try to negotiate. they refuse. They permanently shut down. So in that context, I have two options. And I speak to my colleagues. I have police or private security. If I bring police, they come with guns. If I bring private security, they don't come with guns. Because I can say to them, don't bring guns. And so we decided to bring private security. We brought them. In January, we closed this place, and we ensured that we registered the people. I wrote a letter to the entire university community, including the students, to explain, here's why we're doing this. And this is the context for why we're doing it. There were repeated attempts throughout 2016 to become an ally. Actually, the student movement became particularly violent. Or part of the student movement, I must say. It's not the student movement.
Yeah, probably in the confrontation with the
Actually, they had become violent before that. So let's not lie. So
lying.
check. No. Then you need to do the empirical evidence.
Sure.
So check. Go down and say, when did the violence emerge? So in January, we brought in security.
Yeah.
We brought them down.
That probably was perceived as a sort of repression.
Yeah, but you see, you've already prejudiced the outcome.
No.
You've got an ideological position.
No.
Think it through on the evidence.
No.
So think it through on the evidence. So,
It's a perception.
wait.
Yeah.
Think it through on the evidence. So in January, we bring it down.
Yeah.
In January, we bring it down.
Sure.
So we register, we bring down the numbers.
Sure.
In February, when the numbers are down, somebody burns a bus. We bring the student numbers again. By 2 weeks, we bring it down again. You can check those numbers.
Sure.
By April, when we start the second term, somebody starts again and they go for a burning. We bring up our student numbers. The empirical evidence is exactly the opposite. So that's the first thing. The second, what actually I'm profoundly amazed at, that is missing in this analysis, is the fact that there's political machinations that begin to happen. So at the movement in February, by the way, this is not my analysis, it's the students' analysis, in November, there's a competition between the EFF and the ANC about who dominates the movement.
Sure.
And actually, in January and February and March, it is precisely one section of the political parties that start playing and becoming more and more aggressive. It is the political rivalry that emerges in the center that uses the university system as a basis for that. It's a profoundly apolitical analysis to miss out that there is a political variable that comes into this. So the question is, for those who say, I shouldn't have brought security, and I've challenged them on multiple occasions.
In other university, for instance, in Cape Town, they chose a different option.
So firstly, Cape Town didn't choose a different option. Let's get this right. Cape Town chose a different option in October,
Sure.
not in January.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm talking about in February and in March.
3 months later.
Right.
Okay.
In February and March, they did that.
After.
As the process goes on, in October, I don't bring private security because I wasn't here, by the way, I was overseas.
Sure.
I come back, the private security is effectively incapable of managing this
Sure.
because it was much more violent. And so in a sense, we bring in the police. We first do a poll, we do all of that you can get from my writer.
Sure.
But effectively, we have a strategy. Now, I am actually in direct engagement with Max Price at UCT.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest fundamental differences is that UCT in October, after October 6th or 7th, decides to go for a new negotiation and this thing, and we do it separately.
Sure.
UCT doesn't close its academic program. We do. I had a poll of 80% students saying they want to complete the academic year.
Yeah,
UCT,
yeah.
no, 80%. I'll give you the numbers.
Yeah, I
So
know.
check this.
No, I checked.
No, you haven't, because I've got the data. I'll give you access to the data.
Right, okay.
The point is, UCT, 78% of the poll. It's the largest vote from any empirical data. UCT doesn't, because the executive decides not to do it. Thirdly, UCT, if you speak to the Vice Chancellor, will tell you they did not have petrol bombs 3 weeks earlier than we had. We had 20 attempts to blow up our libraries and our residences. UCT didn't. Fourth, they didn't finish the academic program. We did. Fifth, our class structure is different from UCT's. We have a far bigger majority of lower middle class people. The impact on lower middle class people is very different of losing the academic year to losing upper middle class people. Sixth, geography at UCT is very different. They couldn't do what we did because effectively it's based in a mountain and the ability to close up is not as available. There's a series of much more complex issues. Now you might very well, I'm not so sure that history will see me as having been accurate and UCT not. We don't know that. We know that both our institutions are divided as a result. Frankly, when I made the decision on protest, and I went to every faculty, every single faculty, we got more than 90% of support in every single faculty except one, humanities. When we went to humanities, we had the majority of support in the humanities faculty of staff. On students, we talk about staff.
Okay, staff.
On students, the vast majority, I'm convinced, are very supportive of our actions. And frankly, when those students qualified in March, 5,000 students, when they qualified, including some of the people who were in the SRC, they qualified because precisely we made the difficult decisions. Now here's the difficulty. There are moments in social transformation. I'm not a pacifist. I wish I was. But I'm not a pacifist. And there are moments in social struggle when you have to stare down the very subversion of the struggle itself. That happens in every social struggle. This movement, or at least actually it wasn't the movement, a faction of that movement had become immersed in a militaristic agenda, and that movement was compromising and engaging in violence. I've got emails of students, hundreds, who've written to me and said to me, I support fees Basford. I support the struggle, but I can't afford not to complete this academic year. Because if I don't, my salary is required for my child or my brother and sister to go for next year to school or to this thing. That's the class structure that has to be looked at. And in that context, that's the debate to be had. That is the real complexity of this issue that I think often the left has not truly understood. It hasn't learned the lessons of the 1930s and 40s or the 60s and 70s in other parts of the world. And I think that if we are going to be committed to social struggle and social progress, we better fast learn the struggles. Because as much as when you have the mobilization of the left, simultaneously you always have the mobilization of the right on the same fundamental contradictions.
Sure.
And that's what you have to manage and understand as well.
I completely actually, yeah.
How long? Sorry, I've got to go at some point, so we have to
Sure.
bring this.
I think there are the 2-3 questions. Now I want to be less confrontational, even though I enjoy this provocative type of interaction. If you can maybe talk a little bit about actually the positive aspect and about the negative aspect. You spoke about it really on this move, so we don't need to talk about what was you think the most negative aspect of mobilization, but maybe I want to hear 1 minute briefly on what do you think you more or less said during the interview, but I want to know more explicit what for you was the most positive aspect of the mobilization 2015-2016.
So I think what
by and large overall.
I think the mobilization, with all of its other weaknesses, has done one thing. It's brought an end to the political economy of how we used to do it. We haven't figured out how to now finance higher education.
Sure.
But what it's done is brought an end to an inappropriate model of financing higher education, which is increased fees, lower subsidies. That has now come to an end. And that I can say is happening at multiple levels. The fact that government gave the 0%,
Sure.
the fact that they established a commission on how to finance higher education, the fact that even when I speak to Treasury, whereas before I would speak to Treasury and they said, no, cost of higher education must be bought,
Sure.
because it's not a right, it's a privilege. Now they've changed that position and they say, we recognize we've underfunded higher education. So I think that wouldn't have happened without the student movement.
Okay,
I
so
think
this is
that's
important.
absolutely, and that's what I carry on saying. The social movement was a necessary feature for beginning the transformation. It's not on its own sufficient, but it was a necessary feature, because we wouldn't have reached this moment. I could have been speaking for 100 years. It wouldn't have changed without a social movement
So I
starting.
think you have a sort of dialectical approach, in the sense the movement is the thesis, you are the antithesis, you have the negative moment, and then together in this interaction you produce a synthesis of the same. You kind of very simplistic figure, but
So
you
yes,
kind of agree. Yeah, the
so
negative-
yes and no. So,
Yeah.
so yes, in the sense that it opens up the process.
Sure.
Yes, in the process we are able to, for the short term,
Sure.
come to this thing when we support the 0%.
Yeah.
In the more medium term, that has not happened. And I'm actually sad that it hasn't happened.
Sure.
One of the things we did in 2016 before we brought in the police is I had a set of mediators to try and engage the students and ourselves.
Sure.
And in the mediation, I said to them, let's look at how we can create an alliance between progressive universities and the social movement. And we said we'll declare in favor of free education.
Yeah.
I said we'll declare, we will put activists to engage in it. We will march with you. We will call a university assembly in that favor. We called that. All of that we agreed. I not only agreed myself, I got the council to agree and I got the Senate to agree. We'll march with the students. The students rejected that alliance. Now, the question that I can ask you is why? Why would you reject an alliance? Because I think it was in the social movement's interest. And my argument in that piece in 2016 is that that was rejected not by the student movement, but by a faction within the student movement. And the faction within the student movement had no interest in the alliance, because its agenda was a different one. Its agenda wasn't necessarily free education. Its agenda was political, to take out Jacob Zuma. And this was a mechanism to create the ferment. Now, by the way, ironically, I agree. I don't think Jacob Zuma is a good guy.
Sure.
And I've written publicly that I think he should be out. But I wasn't prepared to sacrifice the university system in that struggle. I was saying, let's work to see if we can create an agenda. I've worked previously with the student movement. I said to you, Kaya Sitole and some of the accounting students, have put a model for it. I think it's a logical model. I ensured that they had access to the National Education Crisis Fund, where I think that they put a much more better model than Treasury has around finding these solutions. I even voiced support for it, both in the 2016 piece and others. I think an alliance is possible. But an alliance is possible on two things. Firstly, you're not held captive by a small political faction. Second, you must have a thoughtful activism. Because an activism and social movement is important for opening up power relations. But if you do it badly, you could lose that momentum of winning that struggle. And so you require strategic foresight. And I say that sometimes, not always, sometimes, some parts of the student movement have not understood.
Even though, and then we may conclude with this, you recognize in the interview that without disruption, without disruptive mobilization, students cannot achieve
Agreed.
memory.
Agree. So the question
So
is
you are
not.
actually part of the
That's right.
disruption.
So the question is not. I'm not against disruption.
Yeah.
I'm against what kind of disruption,
Sure.
what form of disruption, how long that disruption goes. That's where the nuance of strategy and tactic come. When you just say disruption, burn everything down.
Disruption plus negotiation. This is the formula.
That's the point. And so
Yeah.
you got to think. I accept. You can't have a social
Out
struggle
of the street,
if you don't.
out of the boardroom.
Yes, but you also can't have a social movement that doesn't disrupt. You have to disrupt. But
Yeah.
the question is, do you disrupt and lose the whole academic year and destroy them? Or do you disrupt for a moment,
Depends on the
win the thing?
Yeah.
And I'm saying, in 2015, they played it right.
Yeah.
In 2016, they played it wrong. And that's the debate to be had. Now, you don't, I'm not talking you, but
Yeah,
the
yeah,
students,
of course,
the students need a conversation
Sure.
with us and everybody else. They may not want to have it with anybody. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's my role. My role is not to say whether I as an individual have an engagement with the student. My role is, I find myself in a moment. Ironically, for 20 years I've been writing and saying, I'm heading for a disaster. Now we're heading for a disaster. Ironically, when I come to the management of a university, that social explosion happens that I've been predicting for so long. The question is, how do I act as an individual? I have to act in a way that isn't a conservative professional movement, but at the same time have to act in a way that doesn't destroy the university. How do I keep my agenda for a social struggle and social advance, a progressive outcome? How do I keep that in mind while at the same time engage the social struggle so that it achieves that outcome? I don't control all the variables, but I can act within my framework as far as I possible to keep those four together. That's what I tried to do in 2015. That's what I tried to do in 2016. Some people agree with me, some people disagree. But what this is not about is a debate between conservatives and progressives. One who says, I believe in free education, and the other says I don't. What I'm saying is, we both believe in it. The real debate is how you do it. And the real debate is to understand how you advance social struggle and how do you combine mass mobilization and engagement. How do you engage? How do you construct strategic alliances? I think the movement, even after all of the mistakes that they made, in 2015 was broadly correct. In 2016, it's broadly wrong. And I think it was compromised by one or two political factions with agendas that were different from what the student movement.
History will tell us about the future of the struggle. Thank you for your very exhaustive interview. I really like this sort of confrontational approach, and I hope that everything is going to be sorted out in the future.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. I'm now to switch off this.
Guys, you want to take this out?
Yeah.
I'm going to rush.
Cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
Maybe you should shake the hands like.
Yeah, let's have a handshake. So, no, but not without the sound, man. Let's make it more natural. So, thank you again.
More natural, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the
Good.
Good.
Cool.
All right, guys.
All right.
I'm going to go. Otherwise, my guys are going to stop throwing me out of. Oh, God. Sorry. Is there anything there?
No, I just want to brief you before you go.
Okay. I'm not going to do
She's, I don't, where is she? She's not in her office.
Oh, I don't know. She must be going to this thing.
So anyway, they're going to give you a gown instant.
I'm not going to make it. You'll have to do this. I will phone. I told Karina to phone me.
Okay,
I'll check with her.
this.
Yes, this is the
Oh,
girl.
not gown.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go down and tell Gilebo.
Tell them I'm caught up in something.
Okay.
At a meeting.
Alright.
This is
This
tomorrow.
is for tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Put it in my bag.
So let me tell you what's happening. This is for Gibbs. Silla will take you there.
Yeah.
Details are just here. The background document is attached. And this is for tomorrow and Friday.
Okay.
You know that you're chairing the afternoon session and the Friday morning session.
All right. So keep that there. And I'm going to sneak off to the meeting.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
You did it late. You did
The last time.
whatever.